Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the big bath. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have heard I've been in rooms where those types of discussions are happening. What is a big bath? Well, a big bath is typically in this situation here. ABC is experiencing less than stellar year and anticipates a large net operating loss by the time the fiscal year comes to a close. In fact, ABC anticipates missing analyst earnings estimates by 10%. The business environment appears to be improving, though, and management anticipates they will complete a large sale of product towards the middle of the next fiscal year. So, you guys may have seen this before. The chief accounting officer says, hey, we're having a bad year this year. Well, if we're going to have a bad year, let's make it really, really bad, because then if we go ahead and make it as bad of a year as we can, then next year is going to look even better by comparison. And especially if our bonuses and what have you are going to be based on how well we've improved from this bad year to the good year. So the chief accounting officer suggests that everyone accelerate any sort of loss or expense into the current bad year and go ahead and delay recognizing revenue into the next year to wherever in whatever capacity they can. Okay, and so what euphemistically has this been called in the United States? Well, we euphemistically call it revenue or earnings management, we also call it the big bath, because you of wanting to make a bad year look really, really bad. That way, the good year looks really, really good. Okay, well, this is the deal. If you go ahead and recognize these revenues and expenses in the wrong year, okay, you're not recognizing the year in which it was incurred or for the expenses or earned in terms of the revenue. Um, well, clearly that's incorrect, okay? And in many cases, that's called fraud, and we've actually seen that in a number of cases. So, I get there's a pressure to do a big bath, but at the end of the day, if you're violating, the consistency standards, okay, we have a duty for consistency in our financial statements. You're also doing violating the concept of conservatism. You need to go ahead and conservatively recognize revenue, in the year, in the correct period, and conservatively, recognize expenses when they're truly incurred. That's also another issue. And then also the matching concept. We need to go ahead and make sure that it is that we match revenues and expenses in the correct period. And so if we, so there's no such thing as a big bath ever kind of being a good thing, okay? So it's not a justification for doing that. Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward here. What are some additional responsibilities we have to the public? Well, let's look at governmental bodies, commissions, or the regulatory agencies. So one thing to know is that the CPAs are not just responsible for the rules in the AICPA Code of Professional Conduct and the rules associated with their state of licensure. If you are a financial accounting person, you are going to also be responsible for rules set forth from the SEC, the PCAOB. If you're in insurance, the state insurance commissions, Federal Communications Commission, if you're in that industry. So you have to look at a variety of different rules in order to make sure that you and you have to follow all of them. So we are beholden to a lot of different groups, and we need to be aware of that. Okay, so given the fact that we are responsible to a variety of other governmental agencies. Okay, the PCAOB is a enforcement branch of the SEC, and as part of their job is to go ahead and make sure that, especially as it pertains to large audits of the Fortune 50 or Fortune 100, that the external auditors are doing a good job, that they are following procedures, that the quality of the audits is very high. And the whole reason is, of course, our whole capitalistic system depends on the fact that we can rely on the financial statements. And so we need to make sure that, especially as it pertains to publicly traded companies in this context, that their financial condition is truly expressed, and that KPMG is and the other big four are doing audits properly. And so one thing in recent years, the PCAOB what they do is they do a surprise investigation of a variety of audits. They'll go ahead and select certain large companies who are being audited by the big four on a random basis. They'll just go ahead and pick these particular audits, and then they will go ahead and look at the work papers and see if procedures have been followed and if the quality of the audit is good. And KPMG in recent years has been getting into some trouble with that. They've been kind of gotten some red marks from the PCAOB saying that they need to improve the quality of their audits. Okay, well, what ended up happening was KPMG hired some former personnel from the PCAOB. And as it turned out, one or two of those people actually knew which audits the PCAOB had selected for in a future check of KPMG's work product. Okay, and so that's supposed to be top secret. In fact, it's supposed to be sort of like sprung on those audit firms, because obviously you don't want them tidying up their work papers. You want to see it as it really is. So what happened was these new KPMG employees knew what was going to be checked by the PCAOB, and the firm was under a lot of pressure because the results had not been good in the PCAOB reports recently, and they were under a lot of pressure to clean up their act. And shoot, if they found out about this information, this would really help them fix things. And so, as it turned out, they had asked that new employee what was on the list, and they told them. And so then, of course, KPMG went about tidying up those particular work papers in anticipation of the audit. Well, the people who the audit partners who were in charge of this process of trying to improve the audit quality at KPMG, they were kind of in on this, obviously, and they were happy to go ahead and, as I said, clean up those work papers in anticipation of being reviewed by the PCAOB. But thankfully, there were other individuals at KPMG that once they found out what had happened, that this confidential information had been disclosed to them when they shouldn't have been able to have this information, they went ahead and turned themselves in. Okay, now clearly there have been some heavy repercussions. There have been a lot of people whose careers are now over at KPMG. They have lost their licenses. They are in a lot of hot water with all these regulatory agencies, and it's a real shame because those folks worked really hard for what they got. They worked hard for their careers and the approbation and all that, but it is over for them right now. And the firm itself, thankfully, as I said, they did turn themselves in, but they are also in a lot of hot water, and they are in lots and lots of trouble, and they're essentially on probation right now. And so, the deal is what they are. You're always better off doing it right, because clearly this is a big black eye for them.